guys, it's Steph from IDRIVEACLASSIC, Classic, and today I am back in something absolutely amazing. It's not only a Vauxhall, but it's a Vauxhall Nova 1.2 Merit, and I am so excited to take this car out. It was one of those cars that would have been available to me as a first car. It's something I remember rocking around the streets when I was a child. So today, finally my dream has been realised. I've been handed some keys to this amazing Vauxhall Nova and I cannot wait to take you guys out in it. So we're going to have a look around the outside of the car, hop on in, have a look around the inside. I'll show you what it looks like from the driver's seat, start the car up so you can hear that 1.2 engine running, and then we're going to take her out for a drive. And best of all, we're going to catch up with the owner Aaron as well, because there's a very interesting story behind this car and I cannot wait to share it with you guys. So let's have a look around the car.
Guys, you've been asking for it. I've had loads of comments through Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and even randomly one through Twitter asking for me to review the humble Vauxhall Nova. So I've pulled out all the stops. I've travelled all the way down to London to drive this car today because I felt that it was a car that deserved me doing a long drive, and I am not disappointed whatsoever. So the humble Vauxhall Nova, once a regular sight on Britain's roads. Personally, I can't remember the last time I saw one of these that wasn't on a show field, so it feels like an absolute treat to take this beautiful car out today. And for those of you saying, well, why aren't we seeing them anymore, what's going on, I think there's a few things at play which I do talk about as we go through the video. Things like the throwaway society we live in, things like the scrappage scheme, and the sad fact is that cars with quite a low value, a bit like this, don't tend to survive maybe to 2019. I mean, now prices are skyrocketing. However, back to the Nova. Now, I'm going to give a little shout out to all my viewers from abroad, because I know that some of you guys are going to be watching this and you're going to say, Steph, first of all, I've never heard of a Vauxhall, and secondly, I've never heard of a Nova, and thirdly, that definitely looks like an Opel Corsa A. So I'm going to put this out there, we're all right. This is both a Vauxhall Nova and an Opel Corsa A. So if you were on the continent, or abroad in general, you would have known this is the Opel Corsa A, but in the UK it was known as the Vauxhall Nova, and it's down to that delightful habit that some manufacturers have of selling cars under different names and marks across the globe. It's been done for decades actually, and to some extent you still see it now. Now, as I go through the video, I'll be referring to this car as the Vauxhall Nova because that's what I know it as, that's what the badge says, and it would feel weird to call it anything else actually. So back to the continent. The Nova began its life in Europe, mainland Europe, as the Corsa A, and was popular in countries like France and Italy and Spain, where small cars made up to 43% of car sales. Now, if you've never travelled around mainland Europe, I can tell you that the rural bits, definitely, you tend to see a lot of small cars, so that number's not surprising to me. Now, in the UK, Vauxhall had this car badged up as the Nova for its full run, which was 1983 to 1993, and Nova was a trademark that GM already had on USA-based Chevrolet products. So the Nova was introduced to replace one of my favourite cars of all time, which is the Chevette, and the Chevette came to an end in '84, so really there wasn't that much of a crossover. Now, despite this being a bit of a rare beast on the roads of Great Britain today, nearly 500,000 Novas were sold across the lifetime of the car, and can you believe in 1989 it peaked as Britain's 7th best-selling car with over 70,000 units sold. Now, I always see this as a British car, which might seem bizarre to people because it's unique by name to the UK, but it was actually made in Spain, and it was one of those cars that gave Vauxhall a bit of a standing in the growing super mini and hot hatchback market, and it competed against two of my favourite 80s classics, the Ford Fiesta and the very iconic Austin Metro. And sales were consistently strong to the end of production, but by the end the Vauxhall Nova was looking pretty dated because it was pitched against things like the 106 and the Clio. Now, in my opinion, it's shaping up to be a pretty cool car so far, but if you needed just one more thing to get you over the line, the Nova had two famous former owners, which was rally driver Colin McRae and actor Sean Bean. Now, I can't wait to take you guys out in this car today because honestly, it's going to be an absolute laugh because we've done a little bit of exploring already, and I can tell you now I have not been disappointed. P.S. Those are original oil stickers from the previous owner, and I absolutely love history like that.
guys, I'm absolutely in love with this dash because there's nothing I love more than molded plastic in a color-coded situation and a very, very Spartan dash. So what I like about this is there's not too much going on. So as you can see, everything's laid out quite clearly. There's not too much going on, but that central speedo actually is quite well placed. I really like that. So let me show you what else I can see. So you've got down here, you've got your wipers, which is going to focus in there. You've got your lights down there, you've got your fog lights, and you've also got some bits over here, which include this absolutely amazing 80s tastic clock, and hazard warning, and you've got your fan as well. So another point to note is, as you probably know, I'm a little bit geeky about originality, and I absolutely love the fact that this car has its original stereo. Now, because YouTube will clamp down on me if I turn it on and play you any music, I can't today. However, I can tell you that it's decided that in its old age, it's only going to pick up one radio station, so it only actually picks up gold. But that's not a problem because very period correct for the car. Now, as you can see, there's not too much space, but I mean, it's not too much of an issue for somebody like me because I do like that old car, small car vibe, and I think the steering wheel is very nice. I'm just going to come out there and just show you the steering wheel so you can see that there. Now, I think it's high time that we started this car up and listen to how she sounds, or in this case, how he sounds.
So my name's Aaron. I own this 1989 Vauxhall Nova 1.2 Merit, affectionately known as Nev, since I bought it. I bought it in May 2017. This specific car I saw in October 2014, and I remember standing in front of it with my friend and saying, I want that car. It was one owner, it was in stupidly low mileage, and it was in great condition. I forgot about the car for a while until I saw it about 2 years later in Sainsbury's car park. So when I saw it, I struck my opportunity to leave my number on the screen if ever the owner wanted to sell it. Fortunately, a week later she phoned me to tell me some information about the car and that she would be selling the car that year due to the garage who had looked after it since it was new were closing down. So when the time comes, she would give me a call. 4 months later, I got the phone call to say, Aaron, please come around and view the car, it's for sale. So I went round and I was the most excited boy ever. And when I took it for a test drive, I had the biggest grin on my face because I'd wanted one of these cars since I was little. And I'd wanted this very car for a couple of years. So, you know, give it a few weeks, she went away, but I kept in contact with her. And then I bought it on May 3rd, 2017, and it's been my pride and joy and still is. So Nev has clocked 40,000 miles from new last week. I took him down to the seaside for his first ever seaside run. And bizarrely, as it clocked over to 40,000, one of the songs that was in the original adverts for Nova clubs came on the stereo, which was Del Shannon Runaway. So I was a bit freaked out by that, I won't lie. But it was an incredible proud moment, him hitting 40,000 miles, because I was always like, I want to keep the mileage low, and I was dreading the 40k. But after what a couple said to me last week, that, you know, I should be proud of him and don't listen to what anyone says, all the negative comments, I was like, do you know what, I bought him to enjoy, and enjoy him I'm going to. So last year he only done 500 miles, and since his MOT in April, I've already hit that and done more. So, you know, I'm going to use him how I bought him to use him, and that's what's going to happen now. Unfortunately, Nev does get slated quite a bit. A lot of people don't understand the appeal with Novas because they own other proper classic cars, where this is, you know, I absolutely love this car. I've got an sentimental attachment to it. I've had comments that it should be scrapped, that it's a money pit, I should sell it. People just don't understand the appeal of it, but everyone has their own opinions, and at one point I got a little bit hurt by all the comments about it because it is my pride and joy, but now I just let them wash over me. You know, I didn't buy it to please others, I bought it so I had to enjoy it and for it to please me, so I don't care what other people say now. It's my little boy and I love him to bits. I'd really recommend a Nova to someone because they're incredibly simplistic and they're just great fun cars to drive, even though they're slow and everything, but they're quite peppy. And the reason why I love this one is they're so characterful. I've had a couple of Mark III Fiestas which I absolutely loved, but they don't have the character like Novas do.
So we're not going to need any choke on this today, not because the car's not running right or anything like that. Aaron's driven the car here today for me to test. So usually you would put your choke ons, which is just here, but we're just going to start the car straight up. So let's pop the key in and we'll listen to how he sounds. So as you turn it on, You the dreaded radio coming on there. As you turn it on, you get some of your dash lights come up, which is very similar to what I'm used to anyway. So your oil light comes straight on, your handbrake light and your battery, which is standard for this car. So we'll turn the key again, give it a bit of gas, and you can see there the lights have gone out and all that's left on is the handbrake, which means it's time for us to take the handbrake off and take this gorgeous car out on a test drive. Now, I've been driving this Nova for about 5 minutes now, and I feel perfectly at home because everything about this car is perfect. The only thing that I don't like is the slightly high biting point, but apparently that's just one of those things, and it's still on its original clutch because, as Aaron told me, it is only on around 40,000 miles. So we're taking out an example today, which I believe is probably one of the nicest examples I could have laid my hands on, and at very short notice too. Now, if you're wondering where the Nova sat and all the rest of it, the way I remember the Nova is very different to the Nova that we're in today. So I remember when I was at school and when people were getting these as first cars, they were taking them, jazzing them up and often dropping them in a ditch afterwards. They were used, they were abused, a little bit, I guess, like the Metro, that people were just, you know, ragging them about, and because they were cheap back in the day. And in fact, this car was incredibly cheap for Aaron to buy as well. And I guess it could have gone one of two ways, but Aaron's a man who's a bit of a purist. He likes looking after his cars. So thankfully, today the car that we're out in is probably as close as we're going to get to what it felt like to take a new Nova out from the forecourt, because honestly, this is one of the most pristine cars that I've had the pleasure of driving. And for a car that was, and I hope that Aaron won't be offended, and I hope that no Nova owners would be offended, it was for many people a bit of a starter car. These weren't always the cars that people preserved. It's easy to preserve something like a Jaguar or a Land Rover, something of very high value, but it almost to me feels more special that we're in a car that is of relatively low value but looks just as perfect as the day she drove off the forecourt. Now, one of the really interesting things for me in taking this car out is that I guess at the time when I could have picked a Metro, I guess I could have picked this as well. And it's quite nice really to take out something that would have been a bit of, at one stage, a bit of a direct competitor. And you know what? I absolutely love this. The only thing that I'm finding a little bit strange, as well as the high biting point, is the fact that for a car that feels, well, it looks bigger than my Metro, and I think it is bigger than the Metro, the space around my legs feels quite constricted, and where the clutch is feels quite strange, but honestly it more than makes up for it in other ways. So I was told that this was a car that was a little bit sluggish, that felt a little bit slow, but I drive something every day that's very comparable in terms of things like age, in terms of who it was aimed at, and you know what, this feels just as quick and 10 million times smoother. It's so smooth. I mean, you know what the roads, if you aren't in Britain, you won't know what the roads in Britain are like, but if you are in Britain and you're very aware of what the roads are like, everything is very covered in potholes. It's very hard to find a clean stretch of road to test cars on sometimes, and this car is just gliding over the potholes. I am so surprised. Everything feels very smooth. The ride and the handling of the car as well feels very exact. It feels very responsive as well, actually, and I can honestly say that I'm blown away by it. I don't know what I expected. I guess I expected from my impression of when these cars were being dragged around as people's first cars is that it would be a little bit chavvy, it would feel a little bit like a little bit tinny, a little bit boxy, but do you know what, it doesn't feel like that at all. It feels, I mean, this car especially is very well looked after, but it feels like a car that is actually quite sturdy. I'm quite impressed. And if you're wondering where this kind of sat in terms of when they were selling them, it was one of those cars that was designed as the smaller family car, or, you know, maybe a bit, you know, mum's run around, but a little bit cooler than a Metro, definitely. And sorry, Metros. And I can see how it fitted in the market, and I think that it is a great car for the job. We've been out today, we've been parking it, we've been driving around Wimbledon, and it's a great car for the job because it's not too big. It's not like these massive SUVs that people are trying to cram in these ever smaller spaces. It fits very well into a modern parking space, and I don't think the parts are too hard to get either. So perhaps with the fact that these aren't too expensive at the moment, and the fact that the parts are relatively easy to get, it's got quite a youth-led scene in terms of, you know, it's not 80-year-olds sat around grumbling about how times used to be better. It's got quite a, you know, I would say like a scene where people are a little bit more kind of younger, middle-aged. So it's a great car for if you don't have a classic yet. I think that this, in my opinion, would be a great classic to get because it's nice to drive. The parts seem relatively easy to get, and everybody that I've spoken to with the Nova, and I've spoken to a few, has been relatively enthusiastic about the cars and so willing to help and so friendly. And I think that's a great indicator that it would be a scene definitely worth getting into. So I think this is going to quickly turn into another one of those test drives where I fall in love with the car and I'm desperately bargaining to take it home, because honestly this car is it's impressive. Now, one of the things that I always hear from people is, and I get a lot of emails actually from people saying, well, how much does it cost to keep a classic car on the road? This conversation comes up so many times. I probably get between 3 and 5 emails a day or messages with people saying, do you think a classic car is economical to run? Or, you know, should I get the classic? Should I get a modern? And I thought I'd give you a little bit of visibility on how much it's cost to keep this car looking as amazing as it does. So Aaron's had this car since he was 18 and he's now 21, and he reckons he has spent, including the purchase price, around £2,000. Now, one of my friends has recently swapped over from a modern car, I don't know what it is, it's something VW anyway, and it was blue, and she swapped over from that to a Nissan Bluebird, and we were kind of eyeing up how much it costs for the purchase of the classic versus how much she's paying on car finance, and she was paying £200 a month just to have this car on lease. Whereas if you go for a classic car, you own it. They all seem to be going up in value, inexplicably so for some models that are a little bit more boring. And so, in my opinion, a classic is a great investment. It's just one of those things you need to make sure you can get the parts. So for a starter classic, I don't know if I'd recommend something with obsolete parts, but something like this is a great choice because the parts are cheap, they're easy to get hold of, you can just get them through normal motor factors for the most part. You've got an enthusiastic owners club that will support you if you need stuff, and the scene is very welcoming of younger people too. So yes, if you are sat at home and you're poised waiting to ask me, should I get a classic or should I get a modern, I would always tell people to get a classic, because I just think cars like this are great. They're great value for money. You can keep them on the road and not have to spend too much money at all. Especially if you're handy with a bit of bodywork, it's even cheaper, because that's the thing that tends to go really. And I think you have miles more fun. I mean, you know, would I have met Aaron if he turned up one day driving a brand new Vauxhall VW Golf? No, of course I wouldn't. Of course I wouldn't. It's the scene as well, and it's the culture as well. So yes, I'm going to use this video as well to plug the idea that I definitely think that you should, if you're on the fence, and I know quite a few of you are at home, you should definitely pick a classic over a modern, and if for nothing else, get something like this, because honestly it is incredible. Now, when I was talking to Aaron, one of the first things he said to me, because I turned up and I was like, oh my god, wow, I love it, because I'd only seen photographs of this car, and I was immediately blown away by how amazing it was. And Aaron said to me, he said, oh, I get a lot of negativity from people saying, oh well, it's not really a classic, or it's a bit of a rubbish car. And I think that some of us are in this trap that we see some things as classics and some things as not, because I know there are some people out there now that see cars from like 1999 as a classic, and I always think, oh my god, 1999, that's the year I started secondary school, that's not a classic. But I think we need to start doing away with that opinion, and we need to start having a little bit more forward thinking, because I think that the world of classics is rapidly changing. Like back in the day, like it was things like Morris Minors, your old Triumphs, your older stuff like VW Beetles, that's what people saw as a classic. But nowadays it's getting to be more stuff like this. And I mean, even, you know, back when I was learning to drive, I wouldn't have seen this as a classic. I would have seen this as a banger. And I think that's the thing. And I think I think we need to redefine what we see as a classic car, and we need to start thinking less banger and more classic, because honestly, cars like this, cars like your Morris Minors, your Beetles, your Minis, there are always going to be millions of them, and cars from the 60s and 70s, people seem to be saving in their droves, but we need to start saving cars from like this, from the 80s, cars from the 90s, because honestly, now is the time where it sits on the cusp of being banger or classic, and we need to just save these cars because they're great cars, they're great fun to drive, and they are essentially the classics of the future. We can't just keep trolling out the same cars from the 50s, 60s, 70s and going, that's a classic. Stuff like this is a classic too. And the insurance company I'm insured with, actually define a classic now as anything over 20 years old, which is terrifying when you're over the age of 30, because you start feeling very old, very, very old actually. But look, yes, we need to start celebrating cars like this as classics of the future and modern classics, because they really are. And so anybody who's watched this video and thought that this car isn't absolutely incredible and thinks that it's not really a classic, well, I'm going to have to say that you're wrong, because it honestly is a classic. I mean, look at it. It only has a radio. It doesn't even have a tape deck. And I love it, and I fully celebrate cars like this being the way of the future. And I love the fact that, and I know again I'm going to sound like I'm 90 years old, but I love the fact that younger people are taking cars like this on and not just going down the easy finance route, because something like this can be very heartbreaking at times when you can't get a part or when you break down when you're on your way somewhere special. So yes, if you are driving cars like this or you're saving cars like this, you have a special place in my heart, because honestly, if we don't start saving the 80s and 90s and early 2000s at a stretch sorts of cars now, then classic car shows in the future, I think, will end up looking very empty and very samey too. Guys, it's so sad. I hate ending videos where I've really enjoyed driving the car, and this car has probably been one of my favourite 80s cars that I've taken out. I didn't expect to love it so much. I didn't expect it to be in such good condition. I thought it just photographed well. And anyway, it has been such a pleasure to take this car out today. So if you've enjoyed this video as much as I've enjoyed making it, don't forget to hit like. Any comments you've got, especially about how cool Novas are, leave them in the comments section below. And if you haven't already, don't forget to hit subscribe, because new videos go up every Wednesday and every Sunday. Now until next time, take care and drive safely.